And we live.
Hi everyone, welcome.
Welcome to Trevor and Christelle. Lovely to have you with us. And tonight is Thursday night, so it's what we call Activate.
Yes, I'll activate evening.
And we're very
Honored.
honored to have Bob McCoskrie with us again. We decided to pre-record the interview so that if there are any glitches, we can edit them out.
Praise the Lord.
As we learn, we'll get better and better. But we're just very pleased, very grateful that he's willing to take the time and come and spend some time with us and share with us, share with you. And very important interview that we had with him. It had to do with his
Online petition
regarding Don't Divide Us in New Zealand, where we're finding that these vaccine mandates are dividing the country, and this whole thing with COVID-19 and the vaccinations and that are being used. And we can see it once again, it's a worldwide phenomenon. It's been used in countries all over the world where the countries are being divided into two groups, the vaccinated and the unvaccinated. And we know that it's the devil that divides. God never does anything to bring division. And Bob brought out a very important point there, where he said that if the devil couldn't come in person, he sent a virus. and we can see that.
And we all have to check our hearts every day.
Yes.
That because it is an emotional situation and subject, and we just have to keep on checking our hearts that we are walking in love and in unity with people, our friends and family. Even if we do not agree on everything, we can continue to walk in unity and not be divided.
Yes, and love one another.
Yes.
Praise God.
Enjoy.
Enjoy it. We'll be sitting here watching with you.
Yes.
And we'll come on shortly afterwards. We are the light of this world. We are the salt of the earth. We've been called by His name to stand, in His name. It's a great pleasure and honor to have Bob McCoskrie with us again this evening or today. He's the Director of Family First New Zealand. Welcome, Bob. Lovely to have you with us again.
Good to be with you all again.
Thank you.
Thank you so much. And we're going to be talking about your campaign tonight, specifically Don't Divide Us. And we, just having a look at it, we see that the last I saw, there was around about 70,000 people that had signed the petition. And don't you want to tell us a little bit about the campaign?
Well, I think it was originally around concern that with the vaccine mandate, and can I say from the start that we've taken a neutral position. We're not telling everyone they have to be vaccinated, and we're not telling people they shouldn't be vaccinated. We've said that it's got to be like any medical procedure. It should be done with informed consent, and it should be done with full knowledge of the facts, and we should respect each other. And I think that's one of the key things that we've been trying to get across, is that many people will disagree with, we'll have friends that have taken a different view on this, but we need to make sure that doesn't divide us because of those personal decisions that we may be making. And look, I've got close personal friends who love the Lord, and yet have differing views on this, and can justify their view on it. And I think as a community, we need to unite around our faith. I heard a very good sermon. It was actually done by my nephew for another church, but I showed it to our church, and he talked about the fact that if you go round to someone, you can pretty much guarantee that there's going to be a discussion around vaccines. And he basically said we can all have discussions around the vax and transmission and COVID. We know we have no problems having those discussions, but how many of us discuss Jesus and salvation? And it was actually quite a challenge, because when you think about it, family discussions in general, the whole focus, you can spend a whole night arguing about vaccines, and yet it's, at the end of the day, it's not a salvation issue. It's actually, it's an ongoing health issue. Sure, it is an important health issue, and we need to save lives. That's important. But at the same time, it's not the issue that should be dividing us. We should be as keen to talk about salvation and our relationship with the Lord as we are about COVID-19. But COVID-19 is dominating the conversation. So the petition was basically to say that for those who conscientiously could not take the vaccine for whatever reason, and whether we agree with that or not, that there would be other options available so that they didn't lose jobs, that they couldn't go to church. And one of those is the rapid antigen testing. And the rapid antigen testing means that you do a test. It can be saliva, it can be the nose one, and it can be very quick. It can be 15 minutes. Some of the more thorough ones are a couple of hours. It can be cheap. It can be anywhere from $5 up to $15 a test. But what it does is it gives you and a lot of countries are doing this, it actually gives you the latest status of whether you have COVID-19. And as we're finding out, you can be carrying the virus even if you're vaccinated. Now, sure, it protects you more and it protects other people more, but you can still be carrying it. And so this test gives you a exact assessment of whether you're carrying the virus or not. And it's an option for those who aren't vaccinated. I mean, I was thinking, if people turn up to church and they're coughing and spluttering and sneezing over everybody, and it looks like they've got a really bad flu, I mean, we just say, hey, you need to go home, you need to recover. That's right. And that's quite a normal response. And that's what we're just saying. Have the test, establish that you are safe. It is a reality of the environment we're living in at the moment, but let's not divide ourselves as a result. And look, the other thing is, and I've rabbited on a bit, so I'll stop in a sec, but the concern that we had was that originally we were told that it was high risk activities that were going to have this vaccine mandate, and you would lose your job if you're not double jabbed. So it was going to be primarily in hospitals with elderly, and there's some justification for that, some argument for that. And it was going to be in school settings and the border, because we're a bit vulnerable for people coming from overseas. So that was our understanding. But when you look at the vaccine mandate now, we asked for people to contact us if they had lost their jobs or were losing their jobs, and we found out that it was people working on the roads. It was people picking fruit. It was people in non-contact jobs. In fact, I heard of a story of a person who their whole job, they work from home, and yet the policy of the organisation is double jabbed or no job, and so they've lost their job. And we've sort of lost that common sense. Let's be a bit more reasonable about this. And I think the one other thing that I think is really important is that we're now being told that the vaccine has a shelf life. And so now we're looking at this boost. And it's a little bit like the flu vaccine, isn't it? That your flu vaccine from 2020 doesn't work for this year, and the one you might get this year doesn't work for next year. So we're going to have this rolling thing of the whole country needing to be vaxxed, apparently. So, it's a bigger issue. So look, we're just trying to unite people and say there are options available. Rapid antigen testing is an option, and it's not just for the unvaccinated. You could argue it's for the vaccinated as well, because it gives their parents.
Yes.
Absolutely. Because the facts about the virus, I think, it's a ever evolving situation. So the facts seem to change. The efficacy of the vaccine, the process of the virus, the transmission, the ability, the safety of how much safety the vaccine offers a person individually. It seems that you can still get sick even if you have the vaccine. So it's like peeling an onion. There's layers of information as we progress in this thing, as the process goes along. So the saliva testing, is that already active in New Zealand?
Well, the problem is that rapid testing has been banned in New Zealand. It's not even allowed,
Okay.
and there's been pushes. I mean, it has been coming in, and I think some companies have been using it because it's been the best way for them to manage it, especially because not everybody had got to the target of what they want vaxxed. But for some reason, and that's the interesting thing, is that why have they banned what could be a good test when it's been used in other countries? And I think that's been kind of the concerning thing to watch, is that we've become very polarized, and you've kind of got two extremes. You've got the people who are pro-vax that are saying, "Oh, just get the vax. The government said it's good, and we should do what the government says. Get the vax." And that's one extreme. And then you've got the other extreme of people wearing tinfoil hats and saying that everything is the mark of the beast, and we're all going to fly, and it's so extreme, and that's the concern, and that's what's dividing. And as I said, if the devil couldn't turn up in person, he'd send a virus instead. That would cause just as much damage. And the danger is that we do allow it to divide us, rather than saying we've got to operate from our own conscience, and we do that on a daily basis. And everybody within our church communities and families daily make decisions that we may not agree with, but we need to respect, and we still need to love them and accept them. I actually thought, it's interesting. We're supposed to stand at. We could get to the point where we've got to stand at the door and ask people if they've been vaccinated or not. Imagine if we had done that during the AIDS epidemic and said, have you got AIDS? Oh, well, you've got AIDS. You're definitely not coming in.
That's right.
We'd have the Human Rights Commission jumping down our skin within 7 minutes. So it's interesting that we've got this slightly different approach. Look, I understand that it is a pandemic, and we're trying to figure out how best to deal with it, how to continue moving on in life while dealing with the pandemic. But for every decision we make, there are other things that are happening as a result. And as we know, with these lockdowns, etc., there's a huge cost on mental health and well-being.
Absolutely. I think the level of stress and pressure on individuals and families, churches, I don't know if we've ever been at this corporate level of stress in society as we are at the moment. And like, as you say, it is a pandemic. We're not denying that fact. And,
the thing is, we just got to learn to work together.
Yes.
Although you differ. And
love the
this
person.
Is the issue, isn't it?
Love the person.
Yeah, and one of the campaigns that we did previously was around a doctor from Victoria who was a emergency department doctor, and she came over to see her grandfather who had raised her, and she had been double vaxxed. She'd been tested. She was a emergency doctor, knew the medicine side of everything, and was locked in MIQ for 2 weeks, and they just would not give her grounds to get out and say her farewells to her loved one, and he ended up dying while she was still stuck in MIQ. We sort of we sort of have lost the humanity of that. In fact, when the first breakdown happened last year, a friend of mine, his mother died, and they couldn't have anything. All they got was a photo of the coffin. That was it. That was the funeral. My father actually passed away just after we went into lockdown in August. And we were very fortunate that we were able to bring him home and have that final week with him. But we've had no funeral. And to be honest, for us, it's not a big deal because...
as a Christian, yeah.
Yeah, as a Christian, it's not a big deal. I mean, it's see you later. It's not goodbye. So, and he was 93, knocking on 94. So it wasn't quite as traumatic. But for some families, it's hugely traumatic when you can't have that sending off. You can't even be with your family member. You've got to go in groups of one. And, and I thought with that case, with that emergency doctor from Victoria, I mean, she would know the PPE gear that she needs to use, the protective gear to keep herself safe. She doesn't want to go into a hospital and chuck around the virus if she's got it. And yet we lost sight of humanity on that. And that's what worries me about the no jab, no job, that we're destroying people's careers. And I'm not quite sure we've fully thought through whether this is the best approach in the long term, or whether we are more sensible about health precautions and testing. Personally, I still think that testing is the key. And in the UK, my understanding is that people have in their cupboards, they have a whole lot of these rapid tests so that they can constantly monitor themselves. And that's not saying that the double vax doesn't help protect and minimise, but it's just another tool in the toolbox. So
and what sort of response have you had? I mean, we see the numbers around 70, but talking about 70, the news media, talking about 70,000 people. But how's the news media and that responded to your campaign?
Well, I mean, 70,000 for a petition is generally newsworthy. I mean, you can have petitions that get 11,000 and they'll be reported. 50,000 is usually a good bit of a yardstick that you'd get a mention. The media have been completely and utterly silent on it. They will not touch it. Won't even discuss it. Won't report it. It's been quite stunning actually, and it shows that as I've raised a couple of times recently, and even people in the media or who were in the media are starting to raise concerns that the narrative in the media is being controlled by the government, and the media is supposed to be the check on the government and is supposed to enable those discussions to happen. But no, they seem to be following the party line. And of course, one of our most popular videos this year has been that little fun video that I just came up with, which was about who did Jacinda go to first when in her press conference, Tova or Jessica. It's actually become the vernacular that everybody uses now. If anybody says Tova Jessica, we all know what it's referring to. But it was an example of how the government and a News Talk ZB stalwart political reporter, Barry Soper, who's been around for years. I used to interview him back in the beginning of the 2000s when I was on Radio Rima. I mean, he was around the days of Muldoon and David Longy. He said that unfortunately it's very much staged, very much controlled, and I think that we should be really concerned about that aspect. That theoretically the media was supposed to hold the government to account. Now the government seems to be driving their narrative through the media, and we're having to hold the media and the government to account. So it's pretty full on. I've found that frustrating in general. I mean, we've done a whole video on how to use the media more selectively and be careful what you click on, because a click on the story basically sends a message that you approve of that story, even if you disagree with it. In effect, what it does is it builds the numbers of viewers of that story. And so it tells the media, hey, we should do more of these stories because everybody's clicking on it.
Yes.
And so that's very dangerous. And so I'm very selective when I look through my media, is that if I think that it's going to be biased or that it's pushing an agenda, I don't even click on it, because as soon as you click on it, you have just endorsed getting more of them. So it's really important that we start using some discernment.
That's very good. Very good. Would you mind just explaining the difference between news reporting and opinion-based news?
When I was in the media, it was pretty clear. A news report would report the facts and would present both sides, and an opinion piece was clearly the opinion of a person. Yeah. And people in news worked very hard to get both sides and try to come across fairly. And you know, an example. Well, I mean, when I was doing REMA, once a week at 7:50 on a Tuesday morning, I would have Helen Clark, the Prime Minister, and we would have combative talk for about 6 to 7 minutes before leading into the 8 o'clock news, 8 o'clock news. And I mean, people said it was riveting listening because we were poles apart in our worldview. And but to her credit, she kept showing up. And you know, I think people could say, well, why did I give her the oxygen? You know, why would I allow her to promote some of those views? But that was part of balance. And if you hear those views, then you can push back on them. The other example was the night that the decriminalisation of prostitution happened in New Zealand, and it was, what was it, 2003 or 4, and it was passed by one abstention. A Muslim MP at the time abstained. He was under so much pressure that he just didn't vote, and so it passed by 60 to 59. If he had voted the way he knew he should have, the law wouldn't have passed. And the following morning, we actually interviewed the sponsor of the bill, Tim Barnett, who was a Labour MP from Christchurch. And, you know, that was an example of when you do news reporting, you go to the person who's involved, and I think we probably spoke to Larry Baldock, who was leading the charge against the bill, so we got both sides.
Both sides.
The problem now is that the media have morphed between the two of reporting the facts and pushing their opinion, and they've now become one and the same. And so within any news report, you will see loaded words, loaded terms. You will see certain people interviewed. I mean, classic example just today, drug testing at music festivals. Apparently you can take drugs, and if they get tested, they'll be safe. But we all know that drugs are dangerous and people die from pure MDMA. You can test somebody, ecstasy is ecstasy, and they're still going to die if it reacts to them personally. Of course, the media report, I just read the Herald report and Radio New Zealand, I think it was, and of course they just interviewed the people that supported it, and they quoted research that we'd already highlighted as being dodgy, and so they're not getting both sides. And we actually analysed the coverage in the cannabis referendum, which surprisingly we won, considering the media coverage, because what we found was that the media were hugely biased, and there was so many times when they were reporting the yes side of the cannabis referendum without even coming to anybody from our side for a contrary view. And so, I mean, whenever I read a news article, if I do click on it, because I am interested in it, I will always check to see if there's a contra view, because if there's not, it leaves me thinking, okay, I need to be aware of this reporter because they're not interested in reporting the facts and the debate. They just want to push a particular angle. And it's sad that we've got to that, but I think that's why everybody's going looking for media from other sources. However, I would really caution you, the people that are watching, just to say, if you see something, always go and check if it's somewhere else. Because if it's a lone wolf story that nobody else is quoting, and there's no source documents and you can't verify it, then you should be very careful. I mean, I'll give you a classic example. Just a couple of days I got sent a story about some plumber who had a vaccine and he died. And so it was the vaccine's fault. And the proof was this video. So I went to the video, and the video was some botched up video that actually showed two different people in the video. And I went back to the person that sent me the story and I said, probably should check this because actually that's two different people in the video, so there's something fishy. And so I guess I really want to encourage people that when they get their news sources, verify that what's being reported, click on the links, that if they make a statement, they should really put a source. And unfortunately, even some media that I might rely on at times, and dare I say even some Christian media, unfortunately, they're letting themselves down because they're not, they're sort of hearing stuff, but they're not verifying it themselves.
Yes.
That's something that we've worked really, really hard on. We don't post stuff unless we can, stand on the credibility of it. We would never go, oh, somebody said. I mean, it just becomes a game of Chinese whisper. Are we allowed to say Chinese whispers these days? I'm not sure. I might get cancelled for that.
I think that might be a bad word.
Great game, isn't it? So, I don't know if that's what we were going to talk about today, guys, but I do think that media discernment is one of the biggest issues, because I guess it does feed into this whole vaccine thing, and making sure that we're getting credible messages from credible sources, but also that those messages link up with scriptural truth as well, because the danger is that we allow media truth to outweigh our understanding of scripture, and that's dangerous ground to be in as well.
I was looking on your website and looking at the cannabis referendum, and it said that more than half of the articles did not quote anyone from the no side, compared to only 64 articles not quoting someone from the yes side, while the no position was mentioned in 44% of the story. It was typically deep in the story, or a very small focus of the overall article. 51% of the op-eds were yes biased, while only 27 presented a no position. So it shows you how that a controlled media can actually, and praise God that that the no actually won. But the way that the controlled media has such an impact on society. Now,
yeah, and when I was interviewed by Mike Hosking on News Talk ZB about this, and he agreed with me when I made the point that my view is that the media should report the facts, not lead the debate. And unfortunately, the media are trying to lead the debate in a lot of things.
yes.
And look, the classic example is this $55 million slush fund that the government are giving to the media for public interest. But in the goals of this fund, it says that they're to actively promote certain things. Now, Peter Williams, who used to be the newsreader on TV1 and was on radio for a short time, he said actively promoting is not journalism.
Yeah.
Actively promoting is a form of propaganda.
Absolutely.
But that's how much it's changed. And unfortunately, a lot of our media are simply pushing propaganda and viewpoint rather than reporting the facts. And it can become pretty tiresome after a while, because you just don't know what to trust. But I think, there are things to look for. It's, the balance in the article, who they're referring to, what their source documents are. So we need to be alert.
Absolutely.
I noticed somebody spoke about politicizing the media. What would that mean in a practical sense?
Well, I think politicizing means that the media, people in the media have a certain worldview, and unfortunately that worldview, I mean, let's face it, everybody in the media room will have voted for a certain political party. They'll lean left, they'll lean right, they might be centrist, they might be far left, they might be far right. I think my view is that a really good journalist or reporter, you can't actually figure out which way they lean.
Yeah,
because of the way they do it. And I don't know, forgive me if I insult you. I'm not sure how long. Would you guys know Sir Paul Holmes? Paul Holmes, who used to be on broadcasting? Okay. I was going to say, how long have you been in the country? But that sounded a bit rude. Paul Holmes was a broadcaster who was around through the 80s, 90s. He was one of our foremost broadcasters.
Right.
But the interesting thing about him is that you probably found it pretty hard to pin down exactly what side of the fence he was on, because he literally presented the news. He created the news. He was creative about it, but at the same time, he didn't push a particular perspective. And I think, and even Peter Williams was like that. Newsreaders were like that. When you heard the news, you didn't get these loaded words. You know, it's not good to sit by me when I watch the 6 o'clock news, which I don't do that often now, but when I have to, my wife laughs because I just sit there yelling out, "That's not true. No, that term's not right. Oh, don't tell lies." And it's almost like you're listening to a lecture with an opinion rather than actually just hearing the news. You know what happened. So it's not good for my blood pressure. So I try to watch the news as little as possible. But the danger with that, I guess, is that then you start going looking for news that just you agree with, and you don't hear the other side. And so I think sometimes we need to read things that we disagree with just so we can hear what they're
you definitely need to do both sides.
Figure out the weakness of their argument.
Yeah. A young lady responded to one of our broadcasts this week, one of our posts, and she said that, and she's in her mid to late 20s, and she said most of her peers
at university,
but now she's not at university anymore, but most of her peers that coming from university have a Marxist worldview. So that age group seems to have been changed. And I said to her, where do you think it comes from? Why? And she said, university. Obviously, when she was at university, she recognized it, she identified it, and then media. So it definitely seems as though, and this is the reason why we're doing these broadcasts, is because we want Christians to become discerning and not just to sit and listen to news or whatever the media is that's coming to them and accept it as being gospel, but to become discerning and to be able to identify it with the biblical worldview. So as you said, that's not true. I can't accept that because that's not true. Or yes, I can identify that lines up with a biblical worldview. But just to sit back passively and take everything that's coming in because it's coming from the media is dangerous at this point, especially from a Christian perspective, because a lot of it doesn't line up with biblical truth.
Yeah, and a lot of younger people are starting to understand that maybe before they go to university, they need to do some theology training first, just to prepare for that time in university.
Absolutely.
I went through university and did an accounting degree, and I didn't hear any of this ideology coming through. But it was at a time when there was much more diversity of thought, and academics didn't seem to have been captured by this worldview. But then again, you could argue that it's simply reflecting a wider worldview, which is rejection of God, rejection of Judeo-Christian values. We're seeing that, and I mean, if you look at all the legislation that is coming through New Zealand, I think we talked about this last time. It's all about attacking scriptural viewpoints. It's you can't counsel people who have unwanted sexual thoughts. You can't counsel people that want to be the biological person that God created them to be. You can't say nasty things because that's deemed hate speech. But basically, a lot of the Bible could be deemed hate speech. And so there's a lot of things which are the abortion, the euthanasia, the desire for drugs, redefinition of marriage, attacking the role of parents, even parental notification with teenage abortions. When you think about it, a lot of these moral laws are all about driving down those gates and fences and security that Judeo-Christian values give society. So I mean that's part of the fire, and I know we're probably out of time, but that's why the Shadrach, Meshach, and Abednego story is one of my favorite, and it's probably one of the ones I talk about most, about the fact that the culture is heating up, and it's getting a pretty intense heat. And to be a Christian, whereas it used to be just almost a compliment to be a Christian, now it's almost hostile opposition if you express Christian viewpoints. And I think for Christians, we need to decide Shadrach, Meshach, and Abednego said, we're not going to compromise our biblical truth and understanding. We'll take the consequences because we think God will save us. But even if he doesn't save us, even if we have to face some rather harsh consequences, we're still not going to compromise. And I think for Christians, we need to actually take time to figure out how we're not going to compromise. Are we going to be even if Christians, or are we going to be, I'm only going to be a Christian if I have a job and I have lots of money and things are sweet and health is cool and nobody's giving me a hard time. I'm going to compromise what I say on Facebook because I don't want to lose a friend, and I want to get as many clicks as I can. That's not an even if type of Christian. An even if type of Christian is one who's prepared to get in the fire of culture, even no matter the consequence, because it's more important to speak truth. So I think it's an interesting culture we live in. It's just getting, to me, it feels like it's getting hotter and hotter, and in effect, what they're trying to do is muzzle and make Christians go away and be quiet. And if you look at the example of Israel Folau and the way he was treated, that was just it wasn't actually about Israel Folau, in my view. It was actually about saying to Christians, keep your views to yourself, don't express them. We don't want to hear them. And if you do express them, we're going to come after you like we did after Israel Folau. That's the fire. And we need to decide if we're going to be even if types of Christians, whether we're willing to accept that.
Yeah.
Yes.
Interesting times, eh?
Yes.
Well, this is it. Either it's going to temper us or else it's going to melt us. And we need to be tempered.
What is it? That's how they make gold, isn't it? That torch of fire.
Yes.
Anyway, wonderful. Have you got any more questions, my baby girl?
No, I think we covered a lot. So I would just recommend people to go online to don'tdivideus.nz. Go and do your homework. Go and read up. This is about unity. This is about loving each other, whatever your views are. Let's not divide our nation. Let's not divide our families, our friendships, but let's just love each other and support this. Yes, thank you, Bob, for joining us. It's always wonderful to have a chat with you. I could really chat and listen to you for hours. You're such an interesting person. Really good.
Okay. Nice to be with you all.
Well, we're back again.
Wonderful. That was so interesting.
So good. Really, really good. So once again, thank you so much to Bob. We appreciate him coming on and chatting with us. And please share this. Take the videos and share. Because as born-again Christians, we really need to know, number one, we need to know what biblical truth is. And then number two, we need to be discerning in these times so we know whether what we are doing, what we are listening to, what we are believing is actually in line with the Bible.
Thank you for joining. Please like, love, and share, and send us your comments.
God bless you.
God bless.
Bye-bye now.